For most of human existence, we have gathered seeds and planted them for food. But increasingly, seeds are being seen as just another commodity, something that should be controlled and privatized. Today's technology even allows corporations to manipulate genetic material and patent it as a product. It's getting harder and harder for small-scale farmers to grow organic crops. Is this because of big businesses' seemingly exclusive interest in genetically modified crops? And in 10 years, will we see any small-scale farmers? Find out in this episode of Catholic Focus.
Small family farmers feed the world. In fact, they feed 70% of the world's population, especially in the global south. How do they do this? Well, it all starts with a seed. For thousands of years, farmers have been the stewards of seeds. They keep the best ones at the end of each harvest to plant the following season. They trade them with their fellow farmers, and they know how to breed them to create new varieties. These practices have given us the Earth's plentiful bounty. This seed diversity makes humankind resilient to changes to the environment and other threats to agriculture. But small family farmers are at risk of losing their seeds. What was once a shared heritage is now being increasingly controlled by companies for profit. These companies are privatizing seeds and making it harder and harder for small family farmers to continue their traditional organic practices. Free trade agreements and other international treaties are prohibiting farmers from using their own seeds because they are not certified. Instead, they must buy seeds from these companies. These seeds require chemical fertilizers and pesticides to grow and can't be reused. The result? Companies are making more and more profits, there are fewer and fewer seed varieties, and small family farmers are struggling to feed their families. Already, 75% of the Earth's biodiversity has been lost and more is fading away. We need to act now. The future of the world's food is at stake. Let's sow much love. We can help small family farmers in the global south defend their right to save, use, and exchange their seeds. To learn more, visit devp.org/somuchlove.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Focus. I'm Sheridan Sanders. I'm pleased to welcome to our Salt and Light studios Luke Stocking of the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. And he's here today to speak to us about their latest campaign, So Much Love, which promotes awareness about the privatization of seeds and its implications for small-scale farmers. So thanks very much for being with us today.
It's a great pleasure.
Luke, why should anyone care about this issue?
Well, let me start by sharing a quotation that I once heard. I'm not exactly sure which indigenous tribe it's attributed to originally. I've seen different sources, but it essentially says, only after the last tree has been chopped down, the last river has been poisoned, and the last fish has been caught, will we realize that we cannot eat money. And I would say that this is an important issue because we have a food system that is essentially based on the creation of monetary wealth as opposed to the wealth of human flourishing and health. And that's the first reason why I think we should care. Secondly, and I think this is one of the important key messages of our campaign, is that most people, especially in Canada, have the impression that in order to feed a growing population, we need bigger and bigger farms, we need more and more industrialization of our food system to feed that growing population. It's a constant message we receive. But the research that is increasingly coming out and that we're using as Development Peace shows that actually 70% of the world's population is fed by these small family farmers. And so if we're really going to combat the problem of hunger, where we see over 800 million people, according to the Food and Agricultural Organization, who suffer from hunger each and every day, we need to start recognizing the role that small family farmers have to play in feeding the human family. And increasingly, actually, even large institutions like the World Bank are recognizing the importance of supporting small-scale agriculture, family agriculture around the world, especially in the global south, if we're going to combat hunger. They're even We're just coming out of, in 2014, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, in recognition of the importance of small family farmers, declared it the International Year of Family Farming. So, people should care, one, because supporting small family farmers is vital not only for fighting hunger for the poor, but feeding the whole of our human family, and also the health of our planet as well too.
Now, is this just a local issue for those in the global south, or is this something that affects us as well?
I believe it also affects us as well. There's an increasing, I would almost even say, spiritual desire for people who want to connect to their food, who aren't comfortable anymore with a system of food that brings food to them from thousands of miles away, covered in who knows what pesticides, what toxins, that want to have a deeper connection. And I think evidence of that actually here in Toronto, just for example, is when I moved to the city in '99, there was maybe 1 or 2 farmers markets. And now it's like every neighborhood has a farmer's market. In fact, I had the honor and privilege of growing up on a 50-acre farm. And my parents weren't farmers, but they wanted to move back to the land. And one of my younger brothers, well, 2 of my younger brothers now, are farming for a living. And we've made a connection to our city neighborhood. We have a local farmers market that we got started in our neighborhood, and now it's flourishing, and our family's food is helping to feed my city neighborhood, and more people want this, I think. So I think it shows a desire by consumers, and it's also an issue for farmers as well too. There's a growing generation of farmers in Canada called the double green generation. They call them double green because they are green because they're new to farming, but also green because of the way they want to farm in an agroecological way that's healthy and sustainable. Now, it's a small but growing movement because the larger reality as well too is that there are more and more farms that are going under, and the average age of farmers in the last 20 to 30 years has been increasing as well too. I think the average age in Ontario now, for example, is about 54, 55 years old. And those farmers are losing control of their family farms, sadly, and it was interesting. We had somebody come and visit us once from Senegal, and we were out Belleville Way, and he went to meet a family farmer who had a small farm, and he was talking about the challenges for him as a farmer there in Belleville to run this small family farm. And our visitor from Senegal said, the issues are exactly the same in Senegal. The difference, though, of course, is for that family in Belleville, they would probably just end up having to sell the farm. They would have the wealth they needed to survive. In Senegal, farmers who would lose their livelihoods would be condemned to a life of poverty in an urban slum somewhere. So, but the issues, the fundamental issues, the pressures against them are the same.
Is there no recourse to international laws to be able to protect small-scale farmers in these situations? I mean, what's really at stake here? I mean, if you could break it out for us.
Sure. So ideally, international law could provide mechanisms to protect small family farmers around the world. Unfortunately, any law that exists currently internationally to do that was won at a great price by small family farmers, by peasant movements around the world, and much more power to influence international law exists in the hands of multinational corporations who increasingly want to take more and more control of that food system, especially with respect to seeds. So there exists, for example, right now something called UPOV, which is essentially an international law framework that countries can sign on to. That's like an alliance that then has a framework, a legal framework that then countries bring their domestic laws into harmony with to kind of, be, we would say, UPOV compliant. And UPOV has gone through a number of different updates over the years, and each update is named for the year. So currently, we're under a regime called UPOV 91, and actually, controversially, no Canadians know about it, but very recently, Bill C-18 was passed. It's now off to the Senate, And the bill is designed, among other things, to make Canada compliant with UPOV 91. Now, the Farmers Association that our family is a part of, the National Farmers Union, they spoke out immediately against Bill C-18, and fortunately were able to get its most insidious elements amended. So things that, for example, it's been actually kind of likened to a medieval system. You know, in medieval times, the peasants labored and a portion of their harvest had to go to the local lord. Well, now the local lords are these large agribusiness corporations that control the seed, fertilizers, pesticide markets, especially seeds. So farmers were going to have to sign agreements that would actually have the principle of cascading royalties, so that royalties could be drawn by the corporation on not only the initial crop that those seeds were purchased for, but subsequent crops as well too. And again, the whole thing is designed to, the corporations want to prevent farmers from being able to save and clean their own seed. And so the whole international law framework is geared towards trying to limit the ability of farmers to do that themselves, so that they are dependent on the seed companies from which they're buying their seed each and every year.
We'll be right back after the break.
With all my work on the Green Revolution, it became very clear that local seeds are not inferior. It's just that corporations would like to control the seed and have created this vocabulary of primitive seed and improved seed and elite cultivars and primitive cultivars, totally a cultural imposition. And then in '87, I was at a meeting where the same chemical companies that had brought us Bhopal, and 1984 was the year of the Bhopal disaster. They now wanted to control the seed through doing genetic engineering, claiming a patent, owning the seed, creating international laws. On patenting, what really shocked me was this idea that corporations can put a toxic gene into a plant through genetic engineering and then claim they've invented the plant. They've invented not just the plant, they've invented future generations, that they can own creation. And I sometimes say GMO for them means God move over. We will now take over, collect rents from the reproduction of life, and for me it's an absolute ethical and epistemic and ecological outrage. So that's what drove me to save seeds. We managed to put in our patent laws that biological systems are not invented, that creation is not an invention. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't worked at national level. At global level, after all, the players we are dealing with that are destroying seed sovereignty and food sovereignty, the 5 global seed companies now and the 5 global trade companies wrote the intellectual property laws of WTO, agriculture trade laws. These are corporate monopoly laws. And every country is facing the impact. So I travel globally because I realize the issue of the farmer in India is the same issue of the farmer in Africa. So I will travel for solidarity to support the movements in Africa. Same issue for farmers of Canada. After all, you too have laws requiring compulsory registration that are on the table. Or United States, where the state of Vermont managed to get a labeling law for GMOs, and now they're being sued by the corporations on this new crazy ground that corporations are persons and human beings, and the ability to influence our decisions is their freedom of speech. That if people know what's in the food they're eating, then the freedom of speech of a corporation is being taken away. And so I'm there to help them. I'm there to help them when local seed libraries and seed banks are declared illegal because they are providing an alternative. Or I'm in Europe with the European parliamentarians when there was an attempt to pass laws that would make local seed and diversity illegal. And I worked with the parliamentarians, I made inputs, I did caravans. So whatever I have to do for the integrity of creation, the freedom of people, the dignity of work in food production, I'm going to do it.
Those were some thoughts from Vandana Shiva, world-renowned environmental activist and seed defender. Well, Luke, what is Development and Peace then doing to respond to this issue?
So Development and Peace has always had a double mandate, one to work in the Global South and also in Canada to work on doing education and advocacy work. So in the realm of the work in the Global South, let me begin by just sharing a story that I've been sharing with everybody through the course of this campaign. I often start the story by asking a question: when is an empty plastic pop bottle like a bank account? And most people say when it's empty. But I show a picture of about 14 or 15 pop bottles filled with seeds. And these pop bottles filled with seeds belong to a campesina, which is a Spanish word for a farmer, a female farmer. Her name is Matilde. And I met Matilde in Paraguay, where we are supporting a campesino movement. And these seeds are seeds that Matilde has saved from her previous year's harvest. She saves them, she exchanges them with local farmers in her community, and she will plant them for the following year. It's becoming harder and harder for her and other people in her community to be able to do that. First of all, even because they lack the access to the land to be able to grow the crops to save those seeds. She was actually thrown in jail for the first time when she was 2 years old. Believe it or not because she stole cookies from the cookie jar, but her whole family was thrown into jail because they were standing up for the rights of farmers within the country. And rather than that time in jail dissuading her from her work, she became an activist herself. She was jailed actually several more times, suffered violence even, and she didn't go into details about what that violence was, but she said that doctors had told her because of what she had suffered, she would never be able to have children, so you can probably imagine. Now, fortunately, when I met Matilde, despite what doctors had told her, she was actually 4 months pregnant and probably has a little one running around the farm now. And I wrote a blog post that day called "Resistance is Fertile." It's for all the Star Trek fans out there. Now, Matilde, her story is the story of so many small family farmers around the world who are trying to preserve a way of living in the face of immense pressures. You know, where Matilde lives is actually like a little island in a huge soybean plantation where her community had been able to kind of hold on to these little plots of land to be able to continue despite pressures from their government to make way for these large soybean plantations. And that's the model. I mean, a model of an agricultural system that says, you know, have bigger and bigger farms for cash cropping export is the biggest threat. And a key element to that system is control of seeds. So if farmers have control over their own seeds, have seed sovereignty, that's the foundation in many ways for that small-scale agricultural system. If they don't have control over the seeds, they have nothing to grow. If you have nothing to grow, then your way of living falls apart. So even another story in Colombia, actually, we were supporting campesinos in Colombia who were resisting a law 9.70. There's actually even a documentary made about it. And this law was essentially going to make it illegal for farmers to be able to save their seeds. In fact, it caught international attention because there were images beamed around the world of backhoes hoeing bags and bags of campesino seeds into the earth, destroying them because they were illegal. And it sparked a huge nationwide strike, actually, that there was even, unfortunately, violence. Now, we didn't support the violence, we're Development and Peace, but the groups that we support were active in the strike, and successfully, I'm happy to say, it's one of the success stories. You know, it can feel sometimes that there's not a lot of success stories, but there are. A success story where they were able to get a moratorium on the law. So there are, and you know, Matilde's story in Paraguay, the story of the campesinos in Colombia are just some of many around the world. So helping people and helping people like Matilde, like those, is an important part of what we're doing. But the other part is also here in Canada, not only asking people to give us money through our fundraising campaigns to support people like Matilde, but also to use not only their wallets, but their voices to work for change. And so this year we have a petition that is calling on our government, the Government of Canada, to adopt international aid policies that promote and focus on supporting small family farmers. Believe it or not, not a large percentage of our international aid actually goes to helping family farmers around the world. So we are trying to call for more help to be given to small family farmers, and in particular paying attention to their rights to be able to save, exchange, and use seed so that they have seed sovereignty. So members all across Canada of Development and Peace have been collecting signatures on official petition, in an official petition format, giving them to their members of Parliament who are standing up in the House of Commons and delivering that petition. So we're asking people to take action that way. Also though, not only, and this has been kind of the harder thing for people to grasp, how does this help the whole issue? Because not only asking them to sign petition, but also to support family farmers here in Canada, to buy local food, to shop at farmers markets, to try and buy as organic as possible, or where we're buying things that can't grow here, like coffee, bananas, chocolate, to buy fair trade and support the fair trade movement. And people say, well, how does that help? I mean, maybe with fair trade it's easier to understand how that helps farmers, small family farmers around the world, but how does buying organic produce from my local farmer here help Mathilde or help those campesinos? And the reason why it helps is it's about buying in, literally buying in, to an alternative vision for how we can feed the human family, an alternative way of bringing food from the earth. And I would say that alternative also has spiritual foundations as well too. Because when you speak about patenting, I mean, the whole point of biopatenting is to take control of nature itself. And I think that's a fundamental spiritual question. God gave creation to all of us to share for the common good. Are we promoting the common good? Are we even in some ways violating the sovereignty of God when we say, well, God, you don't own this little piece anymore, we do. We own literally life. I mean, seeds are life. Can people legitimately own life? And not only own it, I would say that ownership really exceeds the bounds of stewardship. Where in stewardship we don't own, we recognize that God is the ultimate sovereign. But owning through these patents the means of life that then have a negative impact and create poverty and impoverish, so many of our brothers and sisters around the world. So that's why I think, when I go to the local farmers market in my community, I feel like I'm doing something that is an act of solidarity with Mathilde, with the farmers of Colombia and everywhere else that we are also trying to help around the world as Development and Peace.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Luke. It was a pleasure. I think that many of our viewers will now not be sitting on the fence with regard to this issue. So thanks again. Very interesting conversation.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure.
I was speaking with Luke Stocking from the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. To find out more, check out their website, devp.org, or better yet, download their app. Well, that's all for tonight. If you have any comments or questions about this episode of Focus, write to us. focus@saltandlighttv.org. For Catholic Focus, I'm Sheridan Sanders. Thanks for watching.